Ramesses III, arguably the most glazed figure in ancient Egypt, with the sole exception of Ramesses II, of course, has had a very questionable history, with historians suspecting him of marrying his own daughter, to him ending up owning a harem of the empire's most powerful women, which, depending on how you look at it, is either the biggest flex or a guillotine waiting to be lowered. But, since we're focusing on serious matters, let's get these twisted shenanigans out of the way and try to explain how one of ancient Egypt's most influential figures hit the bucket. See, before the hit the bucket part, Ramses was actually kind of a big deal. He beat back not one, but two separate waves of sea peoples, a mysterious coalition of raiders that had already wrecked basically every other civilization around the Mediterranean like some ancient wrecking crew with plot armor of their own. Egypt was pretty much the last empire standing, and Ramses was the guy holding the door shut with his own body. He built temples, hoarded wealth, threw festivals, basically checking every box on the Golden Age Pharaoh starter pack. So no, he was not just a Nepo baby. He had actual results backing the generational aura he's gathered in the records. And then, according to the official records that survived for literal millennia, he just passed, peacefully, in his sleep. Presumably tucked in like royalty, off to the afterlife on great terms with absolutely everybody. Did he though? Nope. But for over 3,000 years, that was the story everyone bought. Egyptologists wrote it into textbooks, tour guides recited it at his mummy's display case. An entire civilization's worth of scribes apparently agreed to just quietly let this one slide, right up until 2012, when researchers finally got their hands on his mummy with a CT scanner, instead of just unwrapping him like a dusty Christmas present and hoping for the best. And what they found was not peaceful old man drifts off in his sleep. They found a 7-centimeter gash across his throat, deep enough to slice clean through his windpipe and keep going until it hit his actual spine. That's not a nick. That's not, oops, shaving accident. That is someone committing very enthusiastically to making sure this man did not survive the encounter. Ramses didn't die. He got. And the story of how it happened is somehow even messier than the wound itself. Enter the Harem conspiracy. Picture the world's most dysfunctional love island, except instead of petty arguments over who gets to bag the pharaoh, the stakes are the entire throne of Egypt, and the game can be over at a dagger's notice. That's basically what the Harem conspiracy was. Ramses, as previously mentioned, kept a harem, because apparently one wife was never going to cut it for a guy fighting off entire coalitions of raiders as a hobby. And in that harem was a secondary wife named Tiyi, who looked at the queen's kids, looked at her own son, Pentaweret, and decided the succession math simply was not mathing in her family's favor. So she did what any reasonable person does when faced with existential crisis, organized a full-blown assassination plot to skip the line entirely. But Tiyi didn't just recruit some guy with a knife and call it a day. She built out an entire operation, senior officials, a troop commander, a butler, a treasury overseer, even actual harem inspectors, basically ancient Egypt's version of HR, all quietly looped into the plan. Several agreed to smuggle weapons into the palace. Once palace guards obviously weren't just going to let people casually stroll in with daggers, the conspirators allegedly enlisted a magician to craft wax figurines and enchanted potions specifically designed to paralyze the guards, so nobody could stop them. Ancient Egypt's answer to, how do we get past palace security, was, apparently, homemade voodoo dolls. We actually know most of this because of surviving court accounts, the Judicial Papyrus of Turin, which is essentially the trial transcript for the murder of a god king, preserved well enough that we're out here reading receipts 3,000 years later. When the tribunal figured out who was involved, punishments ranged from mutilation, we're talking noses and ears removed, to straight-up execution, to something we'll get to in a second that's honestly worse than either of those options. And it gets even messier, because even the trial itself wasn't exactly squeaky clean. Some of the judges assigned to prosecute the conspirators reportedly ended up partying with a few of the accused women mid-trial, got caught for it, and were punished themselves, because apparently nothing screams fair and balanced justice system quite like the jury sneaking off for drinks with the defendants on their lunch break. And at the center of the whole thing, the reason T.E. risked everything and dragged half the palace staff down with her was her son, the one she wanted on the throne so badly she was willing to have a literal pharaoh's throat opened up like a takeout container. Meet Pentaweret. Somewhere in the Deir el-Bahri mummy cache, Tucked away with a bunch of other bodies, archaeologists weren't entirely sure what to do with, sits a mummy nicknamed the Screaming Mummy. And yes, the nickname is exactly as on the nose as it sounds. His mouth is frozen wide open, contorted, twisted, looking less like a peaceful royal burial and more like the last frame of a horror movie. Whoever wrapped this guy either didn't get the serene eternal rest memo, or more likely wasn't trying to send that message at all. For decades, Unknown Man E, as he was cataloged, was just an unsettling mystery collecting dust and storage. No name, no inscriptions, nothing. Which, for a civilization that treated names as basically your soul's permanent home address, is about as suspicious as it gets. Then modern researchers ran CT scans and DNA analysis on him, and things started clicking into place. His genetic markers lined up with the royal family, specifically with Ramesses III as a father, combined with the mummification style and the total absence of a name. That made Unknown Man E the leading candidate for one very specific guy, Prince Pentaweret, Te's son, the entire reason the Harem conspiracy happened in the first place. Now here's the thing about Pentaweret. Dude was set up to fail from the start, and then finish the job himself. He was in line for a shot at the throne, or at least his mother made very sure he'd get there one way or another. And instead of waiting his turn like a normal person, he let her orchestrate an entire palace coup on his behalf. The plot got busted, the tribunal convened, and unlike other conspirators who got executed outright, Pentaweret was offered what ancient Egyptian courts apparently considered a courtesy, the honor of killing himself instead. So instead of a throne, he got handed a death sentence with his own name still attached, and had to carry it out personally. He did it himself, presumably because being told to end your own life by the same family you tried to seize power for is exactly the kind of ending that fits a guy history remembers as a crybaby with main character delusions and zero follow-through. But suicide wasn't even the end of his punishment. In ancient Egyptian belief, your body wasn't just your body, it was your ticket to eternity. You needed your organs preserved, your name intact, and a proper burial with all the rituals, because without that, your Ka and your Ba, essentially your life force and your soul, couldn't reunite and let you live on in the afterlife. Mess up the mummification, and you don't get eternity. You just get gone, permanently, no appeals process. So that's exactly what they did to Pentaweret. He wasn't properly eviscerated. He was wrapped in sheepskin, which the Egyptians consider ritually unclean, essentially the ancient equivalent of being buried in garbage instead of gold. No name was written anywhere on or near him. They didn't just end this guy's life. They tried to erase his entire existence, forever, on a cosmic level. And by every account it apparently worked, because we only figured out who he probably was through a DNA lab thousands of years later. Ramses got his throat cut open by people he trusted. His own would-be successor got wiped from reality itself as punishment. And somehow, that's not even the most unsettling unsolved case sitting in an Egyptian museum drawer. Let's rewind a little, away from Ramses III's era entirely, over to a complete different tomb, a complete different mystery, and a body that spent most of modern history known simply as the Younger Lady. She was discovered back in 1898, stashed inside the tomb of Amenhotep II, alongside a handful of other unidentified mummies that archaeologists basically treated as background clutter next to the important royal burial. Nobody was rushing to study the +1s in the room when the headline mummy was already sitting right there. No name plaque, no grand sarcophagus with her story engraved on it. Just an anonymous woman tossed into a side chamber like an afterthought for over a century. And her face? Her face was smashed. Not decayed, not weathered by time, smashed. Like something had struck her directly and violently. For decades, the assumption was the boring, mildly depressing one, tomb robbers. Ancient Egypt had a robust, unofficial economy of grave robbing, and mummies covered in jewelry and gold were basically walking ATMs. The going theory was that someone busted her face open while ripping off a burial mask or jewelry sometime after she died, because why would anyone bother disfiguring a corpse otherwise? Except, modern CT scans said otherwise. The damage to her face wasn't the sloppy, careless kind you'd expect from robbers in a hurry yanking jewelry off a corpse. The wound patterns were consistent with trauma that happened while she was either still alive or at the exact moment of death. Someone hit her hard, directly in the face, with something heavy, axe or mace territory. No, oops, I dropped something while looting. This wasn't a robbery gone slightly rough. This was violence aimed at a person, not a corpse. And then DNA testing dropped the actual bombshell. She wasn't some random noblewoman nobody had bothered to name. Genetic analysis linked her directly into Egypt's royal bloodline, identifying her as the mother of Tutankhamun himself, the Boy King, the most famous pharaoh in the world, whose golden death mask is basically the face of ancient Egypt in the public imagination, had a mother who spent over 100 years anonymous in a side chamber with her face caved in, and nobody had thought to ask why. Which changes the entire nature of the case. This wasn't some random act of violence against some random person. It was someone getting close enough, physically close enough, to a member of the actual royal family to deliver one deliberate, devastating blow to her face. Not poison slipped into wine, not a quiet suffocation in her sleep, a direct, violent strike, up close, personal. We still don't know who threw that blow. We don't even fully agree on her exact identity beyond Mother of Tutankhamun. There's an ongoing debate over whether she's a queen already known to us under a different name, or someone whose full identity got erased right along with her face. We don't know if it happened during a struggle, an execution, a punishment, or something else entirely. Modern science handed us the how. It has not handed us the who or the why. And after 3,000 years, it might never. So here's where we land. Ramesses III, one of the most powerful men to ever wear a crown, had his throat slit by people inside his own household and had it quietly filed away as a peaceful death for millennia. His own son didn't just lose the throne, he lost eternity itself, mummified into oblivion on purpose. And somewhere in a side chamber, an unnamed queen sat for over 100 years with her face smashed in, waiting for someone to even ask her name, let alone who did this to her. Modern true crime loves a mystery with a name attached to it. Ancient Egypt just handed us 3, solved just enough to break your heart, and left the actual answer buried, quite literally, forever. 3,000 years, and the killers still walked away clean. Not because they were smarter than us, just because they had a 3,000-year head start.